People had to park their cars at a neighbor's place, take the snowmobile across the lake to get their car, and then be able to drive into town. There were people 80 and 90 years old that could not, were very concerned that they'd be able to get emergency medical services. In August of last year, I sent a letter to the Department of Justice asking for assistance in seeking compensation for the town of Lac du Flambeau. Town of Lac du Flambeau is in my district, and your office replied that it was an ongoing matter and unable to comment on it, which I understand. That's just fine. But I want to set this up just as a reminder. So 3 years ago, it was at this time of year that 4 roads were blockaded in the town of Lac du Flambeau, and the temperature was 25 below zero. People had to park their cars at a neighbor's place, take the snowmobile across the lake to get their car, and then be able to drive into town. There were people 80 and 90 years old that could not, were very concerned that they'd be able to get emergency medical services. And the perpetrators of this, the tribe out there, they demanded compensation from the town. I would call it extortion. They ultimately got $600,000 from the town of Lac du Flambeau. The unfortunate part, Mr. Chairman, is that the Biden administration took the side of the perpetrators who closed those roads off, and the Biden administration made it clear to the town of Lac du Flambeau that we are not on your side in regards to this. Well, fortunately, there was a federal judge that said, no, this is wrong, what happened, and these roads should be left open, they should continue to be left open. My question to you is, are you willing to work with my office and with the town of Lac du Flambeau to further investigate this matter and seek compensation from the tribal government after their extortion of $600,000 from this little town in northern Wisconsin?
Congressman, you do a great job representing your district, and yes, we would more than welcome working with you, and we are familiar with that investigation.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add, we're highlighting these miscarriages of justice in the previous administration. This is just another one of those small examples, no different than the Catholic Diocese in Richmond and many others that you have retold so many times. But here's another instance of what they did to a small town and nearly bankrupted them as a result of it. Fortunately, there was a federal judge that saw through it and has fixed it. I want to move on to fraud enforcement. You have established a National Fraud Enforcement Division, is that correct, Madam Attorney General?
Yes, Congressman.
Has this new division begun any investigations and getting after those individuals that have committed the rampant fraud we've seen, like in Minnesota?
Well, it's not only rampant in Minnesota, it's rampant throughout this country. Much of it is in California, as you know, and other places. Yes, we are working on it actively. Our criminal fraud division has been working on it. We are expanding that. It was the Vice President's idea to come up with this amazing separate fraud division, which we are establishing and going nonstop, not only to expose the fraud in Minnesota, but around the country. It's taxpayer dollars that have been stolen from the American people, and we are committed to recovering that money and holding those people accountable.
Mr. Chairman, I would remind everyone here, why did this happen in Minneapolis? Why did federal law enforcement have to go to Minneapolis? Because of industrial scale fraud. It was an assistant United States attorney that said, this is industrial scale fraud that's going on in Minnesota at this point. I sent a letter to our governor in Wisconsin. We're right across the border there. My district is only 20 miles from the city of Minneapolis. And I asked him to open the books for a federal audit on food stamps and Medicaid. Don't you think it would be a good idea for every governor to do that at this point?
It protects the citizens, and I can't understand why that's not happening. And yes, I do think that's a great idea. It's happening around this country. And when our new division with Colin McDonald is established, it's established. When Colin is confirmed, he's amazing. I think you've met with him, you said, Chairman. When that is established, we're going to work on both sides of the aisle. That's what we want to do, to stop fraud in every city, in every state in this country. We will continue to fight for the American people.
So you would encourage every governor across the United States, after what we have seen in Minnesota, what we almost certainly know is happening in other states, you mentioned California, you would agree that every governor should avail themselves of federal resources to make sure that this industrial scale fraud is rooted out to protect the taxpayers of the United States. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Someone yields back. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to thank you for holding this hearing and holding it in a...
Moments ago in the hearing room, Representative Tom Tiffany leaned forward and raised a question that echoed far beyond the chamber walls. Addressing Pam Bondi, the nation's Attorney General, he described what he called industrial-scale fraud and asked a simple but consequential question. What is being done to stop it? It was not a dramatic outburst, no raised voices, no theatrical gestures. Instead, it was something far more revealing. A calm exchange about accountability, taxpayer money, and the responsibility of government to safeguard the public trust. Tiffany's remarks began with a reminder of a conflict in the small northern Wisconsin town of Lac du Flambeau. Roads were closed. Residents were forced to find alternative routes in the dead of winter. Elderly citizens feared whether emergency services could even reach them. A dispute escalated into financial demands that ultimately cost the town hundreds of thousands of dollars. For Tiffany, that moment represented more than a local dispute. It symbolized what he described as a broader failure of leadership, a situation where a small community felt abandoned by federal authorities until a judge intervened. And as he shifted the conversation from that local conflict to the issue of nationwide financial misconduct, the discussion took on a much larger significance. Bondi confirmed that a new National Fraud Enforcement Division had been established. According to her testimony, this initiative is designed to track down large-scale financial schemes operating across the country. Schemes that drain billions of dollars from programs funded by American taxpayers. Her words were direct. Fraud, she said, is not limited to one city or one state. It is widespread. And the federal government intends to pursue it aggressively. The exchange highlighted a central question that has shaped American politics for generations. Who protects the public purse? In theory, the answer is simple: elected leaders, investigators, prosecutors. But hearings like this reveal how complicated that responsibility can become. Tiffany pointed specifically to the case in Minnesota where federal authorities described what they believed to be an enormous scheme involving public funds. The phrase he repeated, industrial-scale fraud, was not chosen lightly. It suggested a level of organization and magnitude that goes far beyond isolated misconduct. When misconduct reaches that scale, the implications extend far beyond the balance sheets of government programs. It becomes a test of the system itself, because every dollar that disappears through deception is a dollar taken from something else: infrastructure, education, healthcare, or public safety. Every scheme that succeeds weakens the trust citizens place in the institutions meant to serve them. Bondi's response emphasized a coordinated national effort. The Department of Justice, she explained, is expanding its investigative capacity. A new division dedicated specifically to fraud enforcement is being developed, with the goal of exposing schemes across the country and recovering taxpayer money. It was a promise of action. But the exchange also revealed something deeper: the tension between federal authority and state responsibility. Tiffany argued that governors across the United States should take proactive steps to open their programs to federal auditing. In his view, the events in Minnesota demonstrate that similar schemes could be operating elsewhere. Bondi agreed. In a rare moment of bipartisan language, she emphasized that combating financial misconduct should not be a partisan fight. Instead, she said, it should involve cooperation across party lines, across states, and across agencies. That statement may sound straightforward, but in the world of American politics, cooperation is often the rarest commodity of all. Congressional hearings like this one serve a unique purpose. They are not simply legislative rituals. They are public examinations of how power is used, jamishishin, or misused within the American system. Every question asked in that room carries weight. Every answer becomes part of the public record, and every exchange reveals something about the priorities of those entrusted with authority. In this case, the conversation illuminated two competing realities. On one hand, a federal government attempting to build new mechanisms to track and prosecute complex financial schemes. On the other, lawmakers who believe those mechanisms should have been stronger long ago. Between those perspectives lies a fundamental question that Americans have debated for decades. Can government institutions effectively police themselves? The answer is never simple. But hearings like this remind us that accountability is not automatic. It requires vigilance. It requires oversight. And above all, it requires leaders willing to ask difficult questions, even when the answers may reveal uncomfortable truths. As the gavel moved the hearing forward and the next speaker prepared to address the committee, the moment passed quickly. Another exchange, another issue, another chapter in the long process of democratic scrutiny. Yet the themes raised during those few minutes remain far larger than the hearing room itself. Responsibility, transparency, trust. These are the pillars upon which democratic institutions stand. And when those pillars weaken, it is the responsibility of both leaders and citizens to demand answers. Because the integrity of public institutions does not survive on good intentions alone. It survives on accountability. And accountability begins with questions like the one raised in that chamber today. Questions about where public money goes, questions about who is responsible when systems fail. Questions about whether the people entrusted with power are willing to confront problems that others might prefer to ignore. The American system was designed with these moments in mind, moments when scrutiny replaces silence and when elected officials must stand before the public and explain their decisions. That process can be messy, it can be contentious, but it is also the foundation of democratic government. And as long as those questions continue to be asked, in hearings, in investigations, and in the public square, the possibility of accountability remains alive. Stay informed, stay engaged. And if you believe transparency matters, subscribe to Liberty Report USA and support our work to expose the truth.